Adebimpe had everything: a marble-floored mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, and a husband who spared no expense. But she never cooked, never cleaned, and no maid ever lasted more than a week. Each one was never good enough. Then one humid afternoon in Eco Royale, a quiet, smiling maid named Miriam walked through the gates. What happened next would shatter Adebimpe's perfect routine, expose the cracks in her marriage, and turn the mansion's glittering calm into a silent battlefield. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the house isn't the one with the wealth. It's the one with nothing to lose. Adebimpe thought she was hiring just another maid she could fire at will. Instead, she had just invited in the one woman who would change everything she thought she knew about power, pride, and respect. The next morning, Adebimpe decided to test Miriam. She pulled one of her most delicate dresses from the walk-in closet, a cream silk gown imported from Italy, and handed it to her with slow, deliberate emphasis. "This dress," she said, "must be ironed exactly how I want it. If you damage it, you're done." Most maids would have panicked at her tone. Miriam simply nodded, took the dress gently, and walked to the laundry room without another word. Adebimpe lingered nearby, pretending to scroll through her phone while secretly watching. Miriam set up the ironing board with careful attention, adjusted the heat to just the right setting for silk, and worked in smooth, controlled movements. She never rushed, never hesitated. When she returned the gown 30 minutes later, it looked flawless. No creases, no shine marks, hanging perfectly from its wooden hanger. Adebimpe inspected it like a jeweler examining a diamond. Not a single fault. She muttered. "You followed instructions this time." Miriam gave a small smile. "I always follow instructions, Ma. But I also like to make things better than I found them." It wasn't the words themselves that unsettled Adebimpe. It was the calm certainty in her tone. She wasn't seeking approval, nor was she apologizing. She spoke like someone who knew her worth, whether Adebimpe acknowledged it or not. Later that day, Adebimpe tried again to catch her off guard. She forgot to mention that a delivery of fresh flowers was arriving and waited to see if Miriam would be flustered when they came. Instead, Miriam accepted them with ease, trimmed the stems, and arranged them in vases that matched the rooms perfectly. When Tund came home that evening, he paused in the foyer, breathing in the soft scent of lilies. "This looks beautiful," he said, glancing at Miriam. "Thank you, sir," she replied politely. Adebimpe crossed her arms. "It's just flowers. Don't make it a big deal." But as she watched Miriam walk away, that same thought from yesterday returned. And this time it stayed longer. "She's not afraid of me." That was a problem Adebimpe wasn't sure how to solve. Tund's voice echoed through the high-ceilinged hallway one Thursday afternoon. "Bimpe, I've invited some business associates over for dinner tomorrow. Big opportunity. Let's make it perfect." Perfect was Adebimpe's language, but she had no intention of letting Miriam run the show. "Don't worry, Tund. I'll tell her exactly what to do." The next morning, Adebimpe descended on the kitchen like a queen inspecting her troops. "Miriam, we're having important guests tonight. I want pepper soup for starters, jollof rice as the main, and 3 side dishes." Miriam was already arranging a list on the counter. "I've planned the menu, Ma. Would you like to see it?" Adebimpe frowned. "You planned it?" "Without asking me. I considered the guest's profile based on the names Mr. Tund gave me," Miriam replied calmly. "One is Ghanaian, so I added kelaweel to the appetizers. Another is vegetarian, so I prepared a grilled plantain and vegetable platter." Her tone wasn't arrogant, just matter-of-fact. But it irritated Adebimpe all the same. By evening, the dining room gleamed like something out of a luxury magazine. Gold-rimmed plates caught the light from the chandelier, fresh flowers gave off a subtle scent, and the table was set with precision. Miriam moved silently between the kitchen and dining room, every dish leaving the kitchen perfectly plated. The guests arrived, 2 men in tailored suits and a woman in a flowing emerald gown. They complimented the home, the view, the atmosphere. And then they tasted the food. "This is exceptional," one of the men said, turning to Tund. "Who's your chef?" Before Tund could answer, Adebimpe smiled tightly. "Our maid cooked tonight." Miriam appeared briefly to refill a water glass, smiling politely before disappearing again. The woman in emerald leaned toward Adebimpe. "She's not just a maid. She's an asset." Adebimpe laughed it off, but inside her irritation grew. She was the hostess, yet somehow Miriam was stealing attention without even trying. After the guests left, Tund turned to his wife. "This one is different, Bimpe. Keep her." Adebimpe forced a smile. We'll see. But alone in the silence of the now spotless dining room, she couldn't shake the unsettling truth. The evening had gone perfectly, and none of it was because of her. It was mid-morning, and the mansion was unusually quiet. Tund had left early for a meeting, and Adebimpe was still in her silk nightgown, lounging with a fashion magazine in the grand hallway. From her seat, she caught the faint sound of humming. It wasn't loud, just a soft, almost unnoticeable tune. Curious, she followed it and found Miriam in front of the massive hallway mirror, the one that stretched from floor to ceiling and framed the staircase. Miriam's sleeves were rolled up neatly, her hands moving in smooth, deliberate circles with a soft cloth. The glass was already spotless, but she was still polishing, humming quietly as though lost in her own little world. Adebimpe leaned against the doorway. "What's so funny?" she asked. Miriam turned, still smiling. "Nothing, Ma. Just a song my mother used to sing when we cleaned together." "You're smiling like you're enjoying this," Adebimpe said, half amused, half suspicious. "I am, Ma," Miriam replied without hesitation. "I believe every task should be done as if it's for yourself. It makes the work lighter." Adebimpe raised an eyebrow. "For yourself? But you're not cleaning your own house." Miriam gave a small shrug. "Maybe not, Ma. But my work carries my name. If I don't do it well, what does that say about me?" The answer lingered in the air, heavier than Adebimpe expected. She wanted to brush it off with a sarcastic comment, but for some reason she couldn't. Instead, she found herself glancing at her reflection in the mirror, perfectly dressed, perfectly groomed, and wondering what her own name said about her. Without another word, Miriam stepped aside, revealing the mirror now shining like water. She picked up her bucket and cloth and moved on to the next task, still humming softly. Adebimpe stood there longer than she meant to, her magazine hanging loosely in her hand. For the first time, she felt something she couldn't quite name. Not irritation, not admiration, but an uncomfortable mixture of both. It unsettled her far more than she wanted to admit. By the end of the week, Adebimpe's friends gathered for their usual Friday brunch at Le Ciel, the rooftop restaurant that overlooked the entire stretch of Eco Royale's skyline. Crystal glasses clinked, designer handbags lounged lazily on empty seats, and the air smelled faintly of truffle oil and expensive perfume. They were midway through sharing gossip about a politician's secret second wife when Lami, the most observant in the group, leaned in toward Adebimpe. "Bimpe," she said, her eyes narrowing playfully. "Something is different about your house lately. What's going on?" Adebimpe sipped her mimosa carefully. "Different? How?" "You're calmer," Lami replied. "And when I visited last Tuesday, your place looked like something out of Architectural Digest. Even your flowers were perfect." "Who arranged them?" Another friend, Folklore, chimed in. "I heard from one of my drivers that you have a new maid. Is she really that good?" Adebimpe's smile was tight. "She's fine. Just doing her job." "Fine." Lami laughed. "Then let me borrow her for a week. I'll pay her double." The suggestion landed heavier than it should have. Adebimpe's first instinct was to say yes. After all, she'd given up plenty of staff to her friends before. But the words stuck in her throat. She didn't want Miriam in someone else's house, charming someone else's guests, making their homes look better than hers. "No," Adebimpe said finally, a little too quickly. "She's busy. Besides, I need her around full-time." Folklore raised an eyebrow. "Ah, so Madame Standards finally found her match?" The table erupted in laughter, but Adebimpe forced her own laugh to blend in. She would never admit it, but they weren't entirely wrong. Back at the mansion later that evening, she found Miriam arranging fresh fruit in a crystal bowl for the living room. "Who told you to put that there?" Adebimpe asked. "No one, Ma," Miriam replied, still smiling. "I thought it might make the space feel warmer." Adebimpe walked past without a word. But later, when she returned to the room, she noticed how the soft colors of the mangoes, pineapples, and grapes brightened the space. She didn't move the bowl. She also didn't thank Miriam, but the fact that she left it there said enough. Over the next week, Miriam's touch began to appear in places Adebimpe didn't expect. The dining table, usually set only when guests were coming, now carried a simple arrangement of fresh-cut roses in a slim glass vase. The foyer, which often felt cold despite its grandeur, had a woven basket for umbrellas and a neatly placed rug that softened the echo of footsteps. Adebimpe noticed every change. At first, she saw them as harmless. After all, Miriam never made a scene about them. She didn't ask for approval, didn't announce what she'd done. The changes just happened. One afternoon, Adebimpe returned from shopping to find the living room curtains drawn slightly to let in the golden light of late afternoon. It made the room glow in a way she hadn't seen before. "Why did you open the curtains?" she asked, dropping her designer bags on the sofa. "It was such a beautiful day, Ma," Miriam said simply, "and I thought the light would make the space feel alive." Adebimpe said nothing, but that evening she found herself sitting there with a cup of tea, enjoying the view over the city, something she hadn't done in years. The more Miriam's influence crept in, the more it annoyed her, and yet she didn't undo any of it. One Saturday morning, Miriam placed a bowl of fresh lemons on the kitchen counter. "For cooking?" Adebimpe asked. "No, Ma," Miriam said, still smiling. "For scent. Lemons in the kitchen make the air fresher." Adebimpe rolled her eyes. Old wives' tale. But 3 days later, she noticed the faint, clean fragrance every time she walked into the kitchen, and she didn't remove the bowl. It was a strange, quiet battle. One Miriam seemed to be winning without ever raising her voice or breaking a rule. She was shaping the house, and in a way, shaping Adebimpe's days. And for a woman who had always been in control, that was both unsettling and confusing. Tund had been away for 3 days on a business trip when the washing machine broke. Adebimpe discovered it after tossing a load of delicate dresses into it before heading upstairs for a nap. Hours later, she came down to find the clothes sitting in a pool of water, untouched. "Miriam," she called, irritation in her voice. Miriam appeared from the hallway, wiping her hands on a towel. "Yes, Ma? The machine is broken. Call the repairman." "I already called, Ma," Miriam said, her tone calm as ever. "He can only come tomorrow. But if you'd like, we can do a small load by hand so your clothes don't get spoiled." Adebimpe gave a sharp laugh. "By hand? I haven't washed anything by hand since, well, ever." Miriam tilted her head slightly. "It's not as bad as you think. I'll show you." Before Adebimpe could protest further, Miriam was filling a large basin in the laundry room with warm, soapy water. She picked one of the lighter dresses from the pile and began gently pressing and lifting it in the water, not scrubbing roughly, but coaxing the dirt away. "Here," Miriam said, handing her another dress. "Try." Adebimpe started to refuse, then caught herself. It would almost feel like admitting defeat. So she rolled up her sleeves and slipped her hands into the warm water. The fabric floated lightly against her palms, the soap releasing a clean scent that reminded her faintly of her childhood summers in Ibadan, back when her aunt would wash clothes under the mango tree. She worked quietly for a few minutes, surprised to find a certain satisfaction in it. The warm water, the rhythm, the simple progress of seeing something go from dull to bright again. When they hung the dresses to dry in the back garden, Miriam simply said, "You did well, Ma." Adebimpe pretended to shrug it off. "It's not rocket science." But as she walked back inside, she realized she was smiling, just a little. And she didn't want anyone to see. The charity gala was one of the biggest events of the season in Eco Royale, a night when the city's wealthiest gathered in shimmering gowns and sharp tuxedos under the golden lights of the Grand Imperial Hotel. Adebimpe arrived on Tund's arm, wearing a floor-length gown that glittered like the skyline at night. Cameras flashed as they stepped inside, the scent of champagne and orchids filling the air. It was during the second course, a delicately plated seafood bisque, that she overheard the conversation. At the table behind her, 2 women, both dripping in diamonds, were speaking in low but clear voices. "I don't understand these wives who can't even cook for their husbands," one said, her voice laced with disdain. The other chuckled. "They think beauty and designer clothes will keep a man happy forever. Wait until he tastes another woman's stew. That's when he'll start spending his evenings elsewhere." A ripple of laughter passed through their table. Adebimpe forced her face into a polite smile, staring straight ahead. She told herself they weren't talking about her. They didn't even know her. But the words sank in all the same. When the gala host began announcing the raffle winners, Tund leaned toward her. "You've been quiet all night. Everything okay?" "Of course," she said quickly, sipping her champagne. "Just thinking about the lighting in our dining room." It was a lie. Her mind wasn't on lighting. It was on the fact that she had never, in 6 years of marriage, cooked a single meal for her husband. Not even breakfast. And for the first time, the thought didn't roll off her back. It lingered, like the faint scent of perfume left behind when someone has already walked away. The morning after the gala, Adebimpe woke earlier than usual, though she told herself it was only because of the sunlight streaming through the curtains. She wandered into the kitchen to find Miriam whisking eggs in a glass bowl, the faint smell of sautéed onions filling the air. "What are you making?" Adebimpe asked, leaning against the counter. "A simple omelette, Ma," Miriam replied without looking up. "It's quick, but if done well, it feels special." Adebimpe scoffed lightly. "I don't cook. That's what I have staff for." Miriam glanced up, smiling in that calm, steady way of hers. Everyone should know how to make at least one thing with their own hands, even if they never have to. It's a way of caring. The words sat uncomfortably in the air. Adebimpe crossed her arms, torn between dismissing her and proving she could do it. Finally, she sighed. "Fine. Show me." Miriam stepped aside, guiding her without taking over. "Crack 2 eggs gently. Whisk them, but not too much. You want them light, not watery." Adebimpe followed the instructions, her movements hesitant at first. She added the chopped onions and tomatoes, watching the colors blend into the yellow of the eggs. When Miriam told her to pour it into the pan, the soft sizzle was oddly satisfying. A few minutes later, she slid the omelette onto a plate. It looked better than she expected. Tund walked in just as she was placing it on the table. "What's this?" he asked, surprised. "I made breakfast," she said, almost shyly. He tasted it, eyebrows lifting. "This is good, Bimp." She tried to hide her smile, pretending to be unimpressed. "It's just eggs." But inside, the small spark of pride was undeniable and unsettling. She wasn't used to feeling accomplished over something so simple, yet here it was. Miriam said nothing more, just returned to cleaning the counter. But as Adebimpe walked out of the kitchen, she caught herself thinking, maybe there's something to this after all. That evening, Tund was in his study, reviewing documents, when Miriam knocked softly and entered with a tray of tea. "Thank you, Miriam," he said, glancing up from his papers. She smiled. "You've been working all evening. A little tea will help." She set it down and left without lingering, the way a professional would. Moments later, Adebimpe appeared in the doorway, holding a glass of wine. "I see you're still working." "Yes," Tund said, leaning back in his chair. "But the tea helps." Miriam brought it in. Adebimpe rolled her eyes lightly. "She's getting too comfortable. Or maybe she's just good at her job," Tund replied. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "You've been different lately. Less tense." Adebimpe frowned. "Different how?" "Just softer," Tund said with a small smile. "It's nice. I think she's been good for this house." The words landed strangely. Softer? Good for the house. The implication that Miriam, a maid, had something to do with her behavior was almost insulting. Later that night, as she walked past the kitchen, she overheard Tund quietly thanking Miriam for everything she's done for the home. And Miriam's reply was simple. "I'm only doing my job, sir." But it wasn't the words that stuck with Adebimpe. It was the fact that Miriam didn't seem to care whether she received praise or not. That kind of self-assurance was unfamiliar to Adebimpe, and it made her feel, for the first time, slightly unsteady in her own home. Adebimpe's mother arrived on a bright Saturday morning, her entrance as grand as always, stepping out of a chauffeur-driven black sedan in a floral ankara wrapper, gold earrings swinging as she walked. "Mama," Adebimpe greeted, kissing her on both cheeks. "Ah, my daughter," her mother said, her eyes scanning the towering facade of the mansion. "Still as beautiful as the first day I saw it. God has done well for you." Inside, Miriam appeared discreetly with a tray of chilled zobo and small puff-puffs dusted with sugar. "Welcome, Ma," she said politely, setting the tray down.